So I was browsing Twitter after I have concluded my Resident Evil 4 stream, as I was also playing Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, and I have come across some information about the SEGA CD mini thing that's supposed to have a bunch of extra Sega Genesis games. I have quite frankly given up on even trying to buy anything remotely close to this, and the only one I actually bothered to buy was the PlayStation Mini, which is still a fucking ripoff, and no, I don't care if modding makes it better. It is a shitty excuse and you know it. But anyway, to my surprise, this actually does have Streets of Rage 3, which is cool, because I actually like that game. And no, I don't think Streets of Rage 2 is the greatest beat 'em up of all time. That would go to Streets of Rage 3. And let's just put our differences in the comments for a second, because I want to explain something. Bare Knuckle 3 is the intended version of Streets of Rage 3, but the localization team at SEGA at the time really decided to ruin Bare Knuckle 3. They made the game way harder outside of Japan. They made some stupid changes, like removing Ash, which we'll talk about in a second. They made the story completely batshit insane, and it actually took some serious dark tones from the original version and made it completely bonkers. It's fucking crazy how much shit has been changed for the West and the European version. If you're going to play Streets of Rage 3, just get you an Xbox One, get the SVC Streets of Rage collection, and play Bare Knuckle 3 as it was intended. And also throw in Bare Knuckle 2 as well, since you get to see Mr. X smoking a joint. Because we all know that one funny meme that's quite funny. Anyway, shitty joke aside, I will absolutely not be buying the Mega Drive Mini 2, or whatever it's being called. SEGA is once again trying to censor old history. This honestly makes censoring the Twin Towers in Shadow Dancer even more offensive. And it's so fucking lazy it's not even funny. Look, I get that Ash isn't exactly the best representation of a label that people like to wear now and get brownie points for it. And the less said about Bridget, the better. But the fact that SEGA was so fucking lazy that rather than just rework the game's code or something to just not include the Japanese version, they outright removed the entire section of this level in Bare Knuckle 3 because God forbid we have Ash return in Streets of Rage 3 in modern times. It's fucking dumb. I swear, it'd be like if Square decided to remaster Chrono Trigger, but get rid of the one character that people actually like now. Wink. And there's also another tweet from another account, which actually does elaborate a little of what I want to talk about with Streets of Rage 3 as a whole. The fact that Streets of Rage 3 not only got so much shit for being inferior to Streets of Rage 2 somehow. Seriously, people look at Streets of Rage 3 like they do with The Godfather Part 3, and it's fucking disgusting. Or even something like Donkey Kong 3. The game's not even close to being that bad, but whatever. Maybe Yuzo Koshiro's work isn't the greatest in Streets of Rage 3, but it's still a decent selection of tunes that definitely defines blast processing. All I'm going to say is that I do think the atmosphere in Streets of Rage 2 is better, but considering everything else that Streets of Rage 3 does better, I'm sorry, but I'm going with the fast, high-octane combat versus the slow as shit combat that makes me wonder why I even try playing Streets of Rage 2 nowadays when I've always preferred 3 for the sole fact that it controls really well and that the characters can run and has all those unique abilities that did not return because apparently everybody hates Streets of Rage 3. So, it's like that old-ass reviewer who made that video shitting on Streets of Rage 3. So now everyone feels that way, including G-Man and DW. Can't you read? Anyway. Let's go over some other things about Streets of Rage 3 as this tweet is shown on screen. There's barely any ports, which is funny because the game has barely been even released in other compilations to begin with, unless you're playing the Japanese version of Sonic Gems Collection. The only complete package you have for Streets of Rage, actually, is SVC Streets of Rage. And it's only really playable, quote-unquote, on Xbox One. And even that's just Xbox 360 backwards compatibility, which is dumb. There is the standalone Streets of Rage 2, but that shit runs in the same emulator, like with Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, as well as Sonic 3. It's fucking terrible. I hate it. I always liked Streets of Rage Remake. I consider it to be one of the greatest fan-made games of all time. But even I'm not going to deny that even the people who worked on Streets of Rage Remake, at least in terms of level design, they really botched Streets of Rage 3. Like, you have essentially recreated versions of Streets of Rage 1 and 2, but for some reason Streets of Rage 3 gets meshed into a cycle, and it's just a clusterfuck. And what's funny is that apparently the people who worked on the Streets of Rage remake gameplay didn't even like Streets of Rage 3, which is weird to me. So why the fuck would you add Neo X into the factory stage for Streets of Rage 1? That makes even less sense. But whatever. I still say it's the greatest remake of all time. Or fan remake, because, well, it essentially refines the engine to a T, and even with the level editor that's actually included, someone actually has tried to remake Streets of Rage 3 in there, but it pales in comparison solely due to the limitations of the level editor, but it is very much appreciated. I have a feeling that if Streets of Rage 3 did not exist, then we probably just get whatever Streets of Rage remake is without Streets of Rage 1 and 2. I don't understand why people hate Streets of Rage 3 so much. And this is probably why SEGA doesn't even like it themselves. Because they're so fucking lazy, they can't even censor their older games correctly. I don't know. This is just a depressing topic, to be honest, because SEGA themselves, they not only ruined Streets of Rage for me with Streets of Rage 4, but even something like Fighting Force could be the real Streets of Rage 4. And yet that never kicked off anywhere. And then to find out that Sega is doing yet another Sega Mega Drive Mini, which includes some Sega CE games, which is cool. But then they include Bare Knuckle 3, and they just completely shit over their game, because apparently nobody likes it. And apparently if some person were to see Ash in 2022, they would go on a rampage try to cancel the person who designed Ash in the first place. I guarantee goddamn to you that was probably why Sega decided to be lazy about it in the first place. People are fucking retarded. I don't have anything else to say about this rant. And I apologize if I sound a little mellow. But I don't want to go on a half-an-hour rant about shit like this. I think I'm going to go play Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I know a lot of people say it's overrated, but maybe there is some good in just playing the games that are actually good and not worrying about shit.